Hopefully you all had a wonderful holiday and a Merry Christmas, and you were able to spend time with your families and take a little bit of a break and relax. Some did not have a relaxing holiday. Hearing of a medical emergency with a source to the news I gather on litigation against the state's gun ban and a variety of other issues as well. Todd Vandermeide, thoughts and prayers with he and his wife who suffered a medical emergency, if you hadn't seen that news. So definitely do what you can to reach out to Todd and show him your appreciation and that you're thinking about him. But for all of you out there, we've got a lot to get to. Of course, I was off on Friday, but technically I wasn't because I knew for some reason there would be a ruling on the federal firearms licensees of Illinois and other plaintiffs against the state's January 1st deadline to register firearms or possibly face criminal penalties. And that case was handed down. We'll actually touch on that a little bit. But some of the other things we'll jump through today. We'll also take a look at the latest in news concerning non-citizens in the state coming from the southern U.S. border and how there's been a lot of action of migrant buses being dropped off in Chicago suburban areas with the bus driver saying, oh, this is Chicago. And these non-citizen migrants eventually finding their way to Chicago, possibly. But what are these local communities doing? So we'll take a look at what Elburn is doing, the Elburn Village Board, looking at possibly taking some steps. You've also got some other headlines from across the suburban area. I'd love to hear from you, by the way, if you do have any indication or you can provide some more insight. You can email me anytime. And I've got lots of emails that I go through every day, but of course, being in the news business, that's kind of what I have to do, right? And news doesn't sleep either. It just continues to come, and pile into the email. So if you've got tips, you can email me, bishoponair@gmail.com, bishoponair@gmail.com. If you've got a village or a county board or something to the effect that is looking at this issue of how to deal with non-citizen migrants that could be dropped off in their area. Because, listen, Illinois, of course, is a large state. We are the 6th largest by population, but we've also got a ton of just rural areas, right? Yes, Chicago and the suburbs, obviously a major hub of population, no question, but you get further out into the rest of the state, and there's a lot of open field and a lot of rural areas. So what are those communities that are maybe on the edge of suburbia? What are they doing? I'd love to hear from you at, you can email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. So let me know what's going on in your community. But we'll take a look at some of the latest in that situation, and maybe we'll delve into some new laws. Listen, it's still kind of the holiday, right? So here we are at the end of the year with a lot of things that could be happening or things that might not be happening at all. So people are kind of phoning it in, so to speak. But not here. We're going to do what we can to keep you updated. So stay tuned. We'll get to the latest in litigation, which I do have an update. All right. While we had the case on Friday, where Judge Stephen McGlinn and federal firearms licensees of Illinois and others seeking to delay that January 1st deadline, well, he also was busy in another case. We'll have some details about scheduling for after the January 1st deadline. Stay tuned. We'll get to that and take a look at status of some other things as well. All right. It is Bishop on Air. Just a brief breather. All right. We'll be back. Friday, Judge Stephen McGlinn, he said that he's not going to grant a delay in the January 1st deadline, which means that January 1st, those in possession of a semi-automatic rifle, shotgun, certain types of handguns, if you're found with magazines over certain capacities, you could be charged with a Class A misdemeanor for the first offense and a second offense, a Class 3 felony. So you've got that obviously is going to be kicking in. But while Judge Stephen McGlinn did deny the federal firearms licensees of Illinois Friday, looking to delay that deadline, he was busy elsewhere. So we'll take a look at this here. Of course, if you follow me with the Center Square, my full-time gig, it has me covering things happening within Illinois, and the Illinois State House and state government impacts taxpayers. And one thing that we've definitely tracked all throughout since January 10th of this year, as we head into a new year, you've got that law that was enacted, the Protecting Illinois Communities Act, which banned the sale of 170 different semi-automatic rifles, shotguns, handguns, magazines, over 15 rounds for handguns and over 10 rounds for rifles. And it also had a registry component to it. So that past January 10th, you had lawsuits all over the place. And we've tracked this, right? We've tracked all of the preliminary actions all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court with multiple cases. And those multiple cases still pending when it comes to the merits. And we've seen now different ways of which these various cases are going to go. But all of the challenges so far have touched on the Second Amendment that went through the appeals process all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court on preliminary grounds, not on the merits. So the Second Amendment challenges bouncing all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now it seems that we're seeing some action back at the district courts when it comes to the merits of issues. So we had this on Friday. Judge McGlinn vowing to address the merits won't block the January 1st gun registration deadline. And you can go through and you can actually, if you follow me at X Bishop on Air, you'll get the link to this. But just some of the quotes that the judge had in this order. He went on to talk about how he's going to take this up on the merits. And he said, government exists to serve us, not lord over us. The Constitution places limits on government's power while guaranteeing freedom and liberty to the people. The Second Amendment guarantee is fundamental and belongs to the citizens. The Second Amendment acknowledges the rights of the people, not a license to be issued or denied by the government as it sees fit. He talked about how he endeavored to faithfully apply previous U.S. Supreme Court precedent on the issue and any entreaties to ignore, erode, or infringe the constitutional rights of the people will not gain traction in this court. So that was, of course, on Friday. He issues that ruling denying the delay in January 1st deadline, but saying that he doesn't want any more preliminary actions. He wants to get to the merits of this. So while we looked at that on Friday, and again, I was supposed to be off Friday, but I still got that story out for you because it was important. A lot of people waiting to see what happens with the January 1st deadline. So far, it looks like the January 1st deadline is going to be in place. And there's not much that I see, at least as far as and how closely I've been tracking this. There's nothing that's going to essentially block that except for possibly, I don't know. I guess it's a possibility. The governor could issue an executive order to delay things. But that's just, again, you look at all the different types of things there are on the table for actions that could be taken. You've got the judiciary. Lots been had there. It's gone all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, even with a couple of cases, and no action on a preliminary basis to block that January 1st deadline. In the lower courts as well, not willing to go that far. What are the other options? Well, the executive branch can do some options like either have the executive do an executive order saying that we're not going to be able to implement this yet, or however they want to, possibly do that. Just looking at the whatever options there are. But then that means the January 1st deadline is going to hit. It's coming up. I mean, we've got Monday is New Year's Day. So that's happening, and how that's going to be enforced, that'll be interesting to see. And that's one thing that McGlinn seemed to hint at his order on Friday, was seeing how this ultimately gets enforced. But here we have also, I want to make sure that we pull this up. This is the docket for, and just to double check my notes that I've got this correct as well, as we do live to tape here every weekday morning. Hopefully you do subscribe and hit that notification bell, so while you're sipping on your coffee in the morning, You can keep updated with what's going on because it's not just litigation against the gun ban. It's also a lot of things that are happening at the Illinois State House, which in a couple of weeks, they're going to be pretty busy. But anyways, in the Barnett case, so we've talked a lot about, different cases and how they are all consolidated. Well, you've got the Barnett case here that has some action in it from last week. And I do want to kind of zoom down to this so that we can look at the latest docket entries in the Barnett case, which, again, was where a lot of these cases all kind of consolidated. You had Jeremy Langley, one of the Langley plaintiffs, different plaintiffs in this group in the Southern District of Illinois. The Langley plaintiffs, they did make that motion through Thomas Mag to have the law blocked because of vagueness, if you recall, right? So you had that was heard back in October. And the motion to have this blocked, they held that hearing, and then you had the order being denied. All right, so the motion for partial summary judgment was denied. That was earlier this month, and we covered this. And this is, again, from attorney Thomas Mag. So while that happened, you had days later, Judge Stephen McGlinn then also deny the Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois challenge, trying to delay the January 1st deadline. That kicked in. But back to the Langley case. I didn't track this last week, but you had the Langley plaintiffs motion for summary judgment on Fifth Amendment issues. So this is where you've got the, and that's taking like 6 minutes to get to the punchline here, but this is the latest, right? It's a motion for summary judgment against the law based on Fifth Amendment issues. So obviously we're going to see more on this, because if you look further into the docket, you had that motion for summary judgment on Fifth Amendment issues, and we've talked to attorney Thomas Mag about this. Maybe I'll have to get him back on to discuss further about the Fifth Amendment issues. That was filed for summary judgment, meaning it would be final action on the merits, right? So we're starting to see, again, how we're going to get into the merits here pretty quick. Thomas Mag bringing this action, motion for summary judgment on Fifth Amendment last week. The motion for extension to file a response. That was a motion from the state, all right? So they want to see if they can delay getting a response in. The order for the motion to dismiss in the Federal Firearms Licensee case was logged here in this, because we're in a consolidated case log here, right? So the order from Friday was entered here, granting federal firearms licensees defense motion to dismiss. All right, so that's just logged in here, that the state's motion to dismiss the FFL of IL case, trying to delay that, was granted. So it's not, the January 1st deadline is still there, but also on the 22nd, all right, Langley plaintiff's motion for discovery and scheduling conference was granted. So what we're going to see here is a scheduling conference. So the scheduling conference seems to be set here. I'm looking, Judge Stephen McGlinn, this entry, it just gives the date it was entered. Then also on Friday, here's an order setting the status scheduling conference via Zoom on January 4th, 1:30. So it's going to be a status. The parties should be prepared to discuss scheduling issues and timeline for discovery. These are steps when you get to dealing with the merits, right? Dealing with the question on final issues. So the status, just setting it up here for the 4th of January. So you've got that. Now a motion to reset that date was filed for January 5th or January 8th or 12th. So they're looking to possibly get some kind of status update in the new year rapidly within that first or second week of January. So that's going to happen. We'll be tracking that. Again, like, subscribe, notify. We'll keep you updated on the latest here, because it looks like the federal judge in the Southern District is indeed moving forward with addressing the merits on this. But you've also got the Beavis plaintiffs. And if you recall, they went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, but all that was on preliminary grounds. But when we talked with Hannah Hill from the National Association for Gun Rights, she spelled out that you've got this question that's still going to be in front of the justices of the U.S. Supreme Court sooner rather than later, because you had the Seventh Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals in the Beavis case, and really all the consolidated cases. And this is really, I think, why the Southern District of Illinois Judge Stephen McGlinn is wanting to get to the merits, because, well, the Seventh Circuit they've kind of shown that they're not really going to take these preliminary actions. So here we go with the merits. But the Beavis case, Hannah Hill says that they are likely preparing a filing to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Our cert appeal is due 90 days from the denial of en banc review at the Seventh Circuit. 90 days, that's going to put us about in the that's going to put us about in the second week of March. And obviously our lawyer is going to take the time to get it right, but we are anxious to file it as soon as possible.
So again, that's Hannah Hill from the National Association for Gun Rights when she was talking with me, was that last week or the week before? My gosh, how time is flying. But clearly, we're not done with this. Yes, the January 1st deadline seems to be ready to kick in, but the challenges against this on the merits are not done. So status hearings being set for Fifth Amendment arguments to be made about the constitutionality of a gun registry. So maybe we'll get more detail from Thomas Mag on that. We'll see what is ultimately filed back at the U.S. Supreme Court from the Beavis case. And somebody else talking about, the various other cases that came from the state. Because here we are. You've got... I'm loving the questions, by the way. I got to look at your guys' comments live. But you've got the Calkins case that's in front of the U.S. Supreme Court still, even though a motion for immediate action was not granted. They did forward the Calkins case to the court, the U.S. Supreme Court, so that's still pending. But you've got Thomas DeVore's case as well. He is going to be in front of a state-level judge to look at possibly reinstating his cases, which he's going to argue that were improperly dismissed after the Illinois Supreme Court in the Calkins case decided in favor of the state. So you've got that at play too on the state level cases. So listen, there's a lot going on here. The January 1st deadline going to be effective, but the court challenges continue. And here's Governor J.B. Pritzker. I haven't played this. I've been meaning to get to this, but I think it more or less, it's not about the gun issue, but more about the political difference issues that there are and how, when there are political differences, sometimes you hash them out in elections. But is this a political difference issue or is this a constitutional rights issue? Because this comment the governor made is not about the gun issue. This comment that he made earlier this month or late last month, I'll have to check the date on this again, but he essentially is referring to that case that had pro-life groups sue the state for a law that allowed the state to go after pregnancy crisis centers that didn't offer abortion. And state law allowed for the Illinois Attorney General to treat the speech of pro-life pregnancy centers different than the speech of pro-choice pregnancy centers. So ultimately, it was about a free speech issue, and that was the argument that was ultimately made. And you had the judge in that case say something to the effect, and it's on one of the T-shirts you can actually buy at the Bishop on Air store. Said that the law is stupid and very likely unconstitutional. That's a quote that the judge gave in that case. So the outcome of that case was that the Attorney General is not going to enforce it. So they ultimately just said, no, we're not going to enforce this law. But this is what Governor J.B. Pritzker's reaction was to the news that law he signed to treat the speech of one group different than the speech of another group, a question of constitutional speech rights being dealt with in the courts in an amicable way. Well, this is the governor's response to that.
No, what I can tell you is that the people who are on the losing end of a vote in the legislature often decide that their recourse is to take this thing to court because that they didn't win in the battleground of the legislature, and so that's been their choice to do that. They've done that on quite a lot of things that the vast majority of which we have won on, those of us who have advocated for a law, and occasionally a decision is made. This was not a decision, by the way, against the state. This was a decision made by the Attorney General simply to fall back on the existing law because it does what's necessary.
Again, a law that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed, and that was the abortion issue, but a free speech question in the long run in the courts. Here on the Second Amendment issue, the governor said similar things, while those who lose the ballot box tend to take things to court. I guess that's why we have the three branches of government: executive, legislative, judicial. All right, long story short, there's a lot more to come when it comes to litigation against the state's gun and magazine ban. Like, subscribe, follow, click that notification bell. Here I am, live. it's Wednesday morning. It's still a short week, though. We've got the New Year's just around the corner. Appreciate you guys hanging out and being part of the program. Some of the latest numbers, we'll take a look. I don't think they've updated the numbers when it comes to the magazine and, it's not a magazine registry. It's a registry of semi-automatic firearms. I checked it earlier this morning and there was no update, but we can take a look here in just a moment. Stay tuned, though, because we do have just some other brief updates we want to get out to you, including on the non-citizen migrant issue. So that's just around the corner here with Bishop on air. All right. For those of you keeping score, they have not updated the latest numbers for the state's gun and accessory and ammo disclosure. So still sitting there at about 0.34%. I know a lot of people were on me in the comments. A little bit of a slip of the tongue there for getting the point at one point when I was reporting this out. But all right, that's the latest there. Headlines continue about the non-citizen migrant influx to the state of Illinois, and a lot of questions about how to deal with them and what's going to happen in various communities around the state, because the headlines coming through are that you've got migrants being dropped off in communities outside of Chicago, with the bus driver saying, hey, this is Chicago. And it's not Chicago. So if you look at the Chicago area media, you'll see this where you've got the concern of how they're going to actually be treating these non-citizen arrivals that do end up coming to Chicago via being dropped off elsewhere. So let's take a look at, for instance, the headlines from ABC 7. You've got hundreds of migrants making Chicago their home. You've got this after being dropped off in a variety of other areas. In Elburn Village, they're going to vote tonight on whether to ban unscheduled migrant bus drop-offs. As you've seen elsewhere, the growing concern of whether or not their communities are going to be targeted as the city of Chicago impounds buses. Buses don't feel very welcome there. And even the governor of Texas highlighting how they're pushing back against this welcoming city narrative by highlighting how they're not really being that welcoming in Chicago. But Chicago's not just the only sanctuary city in Illinois. Illinois itself is considered a sanctuary state because you've got the state not enforcing federal immigration law. And that means that they don't allow for even local police to work with Customs and Border Patrol and enforcing immigration detainment orders, if that's the only thing that individual is being targeted for enforcement for. So you see this a lot, too, when it comes to criminal justice issues that are debated. And one of the new laws that's going to take effect is a law that says you can't be pulled over for having a dangly thing between you and your driver's window, the little fuzzy dice hanging from the rearview mirror there. So starting January 1st, police can't use that as a predicate to be able to make a stop. similar with sanctuary state policies that were enacted through things like the Trust Act. And this was even back in the Rauner administration. Former Republican governor Bruce Rauner actually signed something that took a step in that direction. And then Governor J.B. Pritzker in 2019 came in and enhanced that even more. So you have the state policy is to not allow for local law enforcement to have immigration detention orders be the only thing that they can assist federal authorities to go and enforce. Now, if that individual is facing a rape allegation or any other kind of criminal charge, then they may be able to assist federal immigration officials. That's how my understanding of it, all right? Just having covered this for years now and the status of the state when it comes to sanctuary policies. So that's at play in the state of Illinois. So it's not just Chicago. And we're seeing stories pop up of, some communities putting up no migrant buses welcome. If you see this, if you know of this anywhere, please do email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. That way I can get a heads up and see if I can verify if these communities are being impacted by this, how they're being impacted by this, what steps they may be taking to possibly push back against this. Maybe a county board in a central part of the state is looking at possibly implementing these types of things. I can't have my eyeballs everywhere. So if you know what's going on in your county board, please do email me and shoot me some contacts as well that I can reach out to. bishoponair@gmail.com. bishoponair@gmail.com. But obviously, this is going to be a hot issue heading into the new year. Here it is. We're live on Wednesday, taking a look at the latest. And the latest is that you've got the ongoing situation of migrants showing up to various places outside of Chicago. After Chicago blocked buses and tried to impound buses, and you've got private flights even to Chicago being reported last week. Here we are now with seeing stories over the holidays of some town, suburb of Chicago. Bus pulls up, says this is Chicago. Migrants get out and they're walking down the street. That's something that obviously is going to make more headlines here in the days and weeks ahead. Even here, SubX News, they've got this from 2 more busloads of migrants arriving at the Metro station, Union Station, and you've got the call on the public radio here. Again, this is from SubX News. You can hear them essentially playing out the radio scanner traffic from the transportation officials, hearing of more migrants coming to the city.
Generate a AOA. We got another migrant bus. Let me know when you're ready for the info for the AOA. You can use this Union Station as the address.
I can use Metro Union Station as the address.
Yeah, 10-4.
10-4, go with your info, sir.
Alright, sounds like we got 60 migrants at the Bartlett Station. They're going to be boarding train 2718, and they should be arriving at Union. Generate a AOA.
They say 60 migrants at the bus station there. That's pretty wild. Of course, that's just one example of law enforcement finding out about this, transportation officials finding out about this. And it's going to just continue, I think, heading into the new year. And there's all kinds of conversations that are expected to be had as well when it comes to the cost of this at the Illinois State House, and we'll track that as close as we can. All right, we'll take a look at some new laws that are coming into effect here in just moments. So stay tuned. Bishop on Air on this Wednesday. A lot of people checking out. I'm just trying to keep my muscle flexed, right? Because we've got a pretty wild 2024 ahead of us, I feel. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. All right, it is Bishop on Air. Follow, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Some new laws going into effect in 2024. We'll talk about a few of them. Starting in the new year, you've got veterans services that are going to be recognized with state charters. You've got opioid measures that are going to be implemented to allow for fentanyl testing strips. You've got a book ban that's going to be in effect, saying that if a local library doesn't follow the American Library Association's guidelines, they could be not in receipt of state or federal tax dollars that the Secretary of State's office moves through. But also, you've got non-citizens who can become police officers. If you recall, you had House Bill 3751 pass, and Governor J.B. Pritzker signed that, and there was a little bit of pushback. And what this does is it allows for non-citizens here with work permits or those who are here as DACA recipients to become law enforcement. January 1st, that law kicks in. Several months ago, Governor Pritzker was asked about this, and here's what he had to say in response to the concerns that there were. Let me just make sure that we've got this where it needs to go.
I appreciate you asking the question because, as usual, the far right is proposing or putting out their false information. They're saying that we're allowing illegal immigrants is the word that they would use. Undocumented immigrants are not allowed to become police officers in the state of Illinois still. What we have allowed is legal permanent residents and DACA recipients now to become police officers. So we have the ability for people who are legally in this country and again, permanent residents or DACA recipients now to apply for jobs as police officers. But I am tired of the right wing twisting these things. They put it out on Facebook. They tell lies. They attack based upon those lies. They're perpetuating lies. So there are people out there that think that we're just allowing anybody to become a police officer. That's just not accurate. 2 other states already have provided this. We have a U.S. military that has 35,000 immigrants who are not U.S. citizens who are serving in the U.S. military today. 8,000 more sign up every year. We allow that in our U.S. military. We allow it in a couple of other states, and more states are adding on to this list of states that are allowing legal permanent residents. So I'm proud that we are doing this. I think it's the right thing to do. It's also good for our police departments. And oh, by the way, the Fraternal Order of Police has supported it.
And they did. And so did some Republicans in the House. But not every Republican supported this. There were a lot of questions about really just the overall idea of allowing for non-citizens to hold and detain citizens. So that measure comes into law come January 1st. Another measure that comes into law January 1st allows for the driver's license to be standardized. So let's take a look here. This was back in, June. So over the summer, you had Governor J.B. Pritzker sign a whole bunch of bills, all right, after they passed 655 bills out of spring session. Hundreds on the governor's desk, and he signed, I think, like 180 at one time. But House Bill 3882 allows undocumented immigrants to obtain a standardized Illinois driver's license. Now, I want to make sure we're clear here. This was really just removing some words on the actual driver's license, which standardizes it instead of it saying that, the license holder is a temporary visitor license, because Illinois had a temporary visitor's driver's license for several years. I don't know, when was the last time we had that enacted? It's been like 5 years or something like that, if not more. It's probably been a decade, actually. I'll have to take a look. I can't remember exactly when that was, but it's been years since we've had a temporary visitor's driver's license. And it would say something to that effect on the license, big bold letters, TVDL, temporary visitor's driver's license. Well, they're removing that. So the legislation, the governor says, is a significant step to the barriers of an opportunity for many undocumented immigrants. We ensure every single individual, the governor said after signing this, can obtain a driver's license, making our roads safer, decreasing stigma, and creating more equitable system for all. And when this was ultimately signed, you had the Secretary of State's office praise it and talk about it removing the stigma of non-citizens getting driver's licenses in the state of Illinois. And non-citizens getting driver's license, they still have to provide that they have insurance, for example. So, but one thing that the law does starting January 1st, it removes the label TVDL, temporary visitor's driver's license, or something that says this is not an official form of ID or something to that effect. I can't remember exactly the language that it does as we go live to tape here, but you can look it up on House Bill 382. And you know what? Heck, I'll just show you how you can do this yourself. If you go to ilga.gov, and let me make sure I've got this pulled up so that we can look at this together. You go to House Bill, let's search here, 3882, and search that. Standard ID documentation. You can read the PDF of the actual public act. Going through this rapidly for you so you can follow along, and I would encourage people to. It deals with the Real ID Act. They gotta make sure that they have that all spelled out, and they define what the ID is, other than a temporary visitor's driver's license. So they're essentially scratching that from the law. And you go through, and this is a 55-page document, and it shows that other than an application for the form that pertains to a standard driver's license or identification, you've got, hold on a second, make sure that I don't have the governor going off in my other ear here. Other than an application or form that pertains to a standard driver's license or identification card, it does not list a social security number for the applicant. Okay, so it adds some of the language there. Very similar language. Just trying to find the actual language they're stripping from the license to make them more uniform, and as the sponsors of this said, takes away the stigma. Federal limits apply versus just standards. So that's not for federal identification. That's I guess the word that they're removing, right? So it's not for federal identification, but it just says federal limits apply. So yeah, that's what they're doing, right? So when you hear about this law, getting into the minutia is important. Not all of a sudden are undocumented non-citizens going to be able to get driver's licenses. They've been able to do that for quite some time in Illinois. But the driver's license they get January 1st will not say not federal identification. Instead, it's going to say federal limits apply. And I think that's going to be across the board for everybody who gets a non-real ID. And that's another issue in all of that as well. So when you see a lot of these new law stories, listen, this is complicated, and the minutia is important to understand where we've come from. So that's going to kick in on January 1st, making those driver's licenses more uniform. Also, you've got the smoking ban law being updated. Here soon, January 1st, electronic smoking devices are going to be banned from public places. So that as well is a new law kicking in for January 1st. Guys, listen, it's a holiday week still. I'm going to get out of here. I've got some work I got to do. Again, email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. For the rest of the week, we'll do some other things as well. I do plan on trying to do a live-to-tape documentary about where we've come from since the debate around the Second Amendment in Illinois and all of the different lawsuits that have been filed and where we're going to be going from there. So, hey, like, subscribe, follow along. Hopefully this gives you something to get by during a slow news holiday week. But obviously there's going to be a lot of activity in the new year, so I hope you'll join us all throughout. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you want to support the program, I'm just here in my home doing this, Hey, if you want a Bishop on Air coffee mug, you can get that. T-shirt, bumper sticker, whatever. You can do that below. So appreciate you guys hanging out with me. 250 plus live stream in the morning between the different channels. That's awesome. So appreciate you guys. Have yourself a wonderful rest of the day. We'll see you tomorrow, because tomorrow we've got a council corral. The city of Springfield City Council is going to meet. But also we got to take a look at what happens in all these other jurisdictions that are looking at the possibility of limiting non-citizens being dropped off in their communities by buses coming from Texas. All right, I got to get out of here, guys. Have a great day.